What if someone made a game about regime change in the Middle East? Well, that would be Rebel Inc. How is it trying to pacify the locals? Watch on and find out. My name is Thoraxe, and this is Strategy for Busy People. If you've got a few minutes, I'll tell you what to play. When I first saw Rebel Inc. Escalation by Endemic Creations, I was immediately super interested. This definitely did not appear to be your typical strategy game. It also kind of deals with a rather uncomfortable topic: the West's meddling in the affairs of the Middle East. Fundamentally, the game involves you operating some kind of government-ish entity charged with bringing stability to a particular region. But you only have two tools to do it. You can spend money, and you can direct your troops. In what is both refreshingly and sadly an accurate representation of how things work in the real world, spending money on all of these programs causes inflation in the local economy, which degrades the value of the money, which makes programs more expensive. Spending too much money at once on one category's programs causes inflation to rise rapidly, and the only cure for this is time. But, as with all governments, the bigger they are and the more complex things get, the more corruption becomes a problem and a drag on their activities. So you have government programs to help root out the corruption, but spending too much there causes inflation, and well, you can start to see how this gets very complex very quickly. Lastly, we have the military programs. Things start out pretty basic. You can bring in coalition soldiers from abroad to keep the peace, and again, in what is both refreshing and sad, this is modeled fairly well around how things work in the real world. Those soldiers aren't from around here, and hanging out in the zones causes strife. Later, you get the ability to teach your soldiers the local language and have them help out with projects in the zones where they are stationed, and so forth, all in an effort to reduce how upset their presence makes the locals. But why are soldiers important anyway? Well, because insurgents will appear and try to take over, and that's where the troop direction portion of the game comes into play. The combat mechanics in the game are actually quite interesting. To defeat an enemy insurgent presence, you must fully surround the insurgents so that they cannot escape the zone. In some cases, the geography of the zones may aid you with impassable terrain, but in other cases, it's a real challenge because you have a limit to how many coalition shoulder units you can activate in a short period of time. You do get the ability to establish local garrisons later through a combat upgrade, but it's unclear how or why a garrison becomes available to form in an area. The difficult part of the game becomes balancing all of these different micro-challenges against one another. You have limited funds that you need to direct to improving the local area without causing too much inflation, without causing too much corruption, and while spending money to support a military to tamp down insurgent activity and keep the ball rolling in the right direction. But the insurgents keep popping up here and there and taking back some of your hard-won zones. So, ultimately, the goal is to try to get the insurgents to agree to peace while bringing stability to the entire region without running out of reputation, which your actions are potentially always knocking down. And you have all these pop-up decisions that you have to make, which have their own repercussions. There are quite a lot of scenarios offered in the base game, and then there are additional challenges that are presented to you. Winning scenarios can open up different options for the choice of governor, as well as different advisors. The governors each have different management styles that impact your gameplay. I was able to unlock the economist and tried her out for one run. As opposed to the default civil servant, the economist gets all the money up front, which has both pros and cons to it. Different advisors may provide different buffs to different aspects of the game. I unlocked a couple of choices of military advisors, one of which reduced the amount of hostility that my coalition soldiers generated when in a zone. There's also some DLC that introduces new game mechanics and special events. Hey, before I give my final verdict, if this is your first episode, this one's free. But if you've watched me before, we're going to make an agreement. You help me level up by clicking subscribe, and I'll keep making these videos. I'll spend the time playing the games and making content that I hope you'll like, and you'll return the favor, okay? Leave comments, tell me what you think. It's all good. You just agree to engage. That's all I ask. The final verdict. I gotta say, I didn't know what to really expect when I got into this game, and it ended up pleasantly surprising me. Given the large number of scenarios, governors, advisors, and difficulty settings, the replayability of this game is pretty high, especially with the different pop-up challenges. But while you can change a lot of the starting game inputs with all of these settings, it appears that all the programs and actions that you can take are identical. However, each scenario and combination of governors and advisors may result in a different set of choices being the most optimal to complete the scenario. On my trademark 3-point score scale of avoid, meh, and I forgot to eat, you can bring food and water to the locals, but you can't automatically make them love you. Fortunately, the game itself is quite lovable and is worth a try, even if the soundtrack is a little lacking. And when the peace treaty is signed and everyone has packed up and left for the next project, the good local restaurants might actually not be packed with expats. Nobody likes those suits anyway.